Hi y'all. Happy Wednesday. Today we're gonna be jumping into what happened after the sacred betrayal. If you guys are not privy, we've been talking about Atlantis every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So today we're gonna do the same thing. But this is episode 10. So quite a ways down the line. So if you haven't watched the other episodes, actually episode 11 technically. No, episode 10. So if you haven't been watching, everything is available on YouTube, and this also will be available on YouTube as well. Hold on, y'all. Got my work done for this week. So we're going to continue the conversation with what we have been talking about every Wednesday. So today's topics, or actually last time we talked about what is a temple and how to create temples. We're creating this temple together right now, which is just a safe space. It's a space where love can exist and remembrance can exist and things like that. We also talked about the golden age of Atlantis. We talked about the process of how the crystal flame actually selected Amara. We talked about sacred separation, a day in the life of Amara as a high priestess, her practices, her rituals. We also talked about what breath actually is. It's our flame manifested in this reality. How long before the betrayal she warned them about the betrayal. And then we talked about the sacred betrayal, which is how she was attacked by some of these forces, entities, or whatever. And also how she defended herself. Today, we're going to talk about what she did after betrayal or during the betrayal to kind of protect the crystal flame crystal and the frequency of Atlantis just in general. Which is Relics. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Bill. So we'll talk about the different things that she did with the relics that she had. We'll talk about the obelisk, which I think we haven't talked about obelisk yet. But I don't know if I told y'all I was having visions about obelisk being in this really, really crystal clear water. And it was like multiple of them coming out of the water or whatever. And then I went into a vision where it was like almost like a narrator in my head, and it was basically saying we need to put the obelisk back. And they took me to the obelisk that's in Central Park, which is Cleopatra's Needle is what they call it. And they took me to that obelisk, and then they took me underground to some tunnels, and something started coming towards me, baby. I said, get me up out of here. Wrap this up. And so I jumped out of it because fear energy definitely get you up out of there. But then the next thing that I see when I go back into the vision is like an aerial view of like these crystal waters with obelisks coming out of them. And so we're going to talk about like the obelisk and what she did with the obelisk after the sacred betrayal, but we'll also talk about Amara's connection to the obelisk and why it's important. So we'll talk about relics, we'll talk about obelisk, and then we'll talk about what else she did after the sacred betrayal. We'll talk about what was done by other priestesses as well, because there's certain things that was done by other priestesses as well. We'll talk about the indigo children today, the golden children, the crystal children, the rainbow children. We'll talk about the war in heaven, where we get the war in heaven from. We'll talk about that and what it actually means. We'll talk about the leadership in the new earth frequency, and we'll talk about Amara in the new earth frequency. So this episode today is quite lengthy, if I shall say so myself. It's about almost 7,000 words. So it's going to be lengthy. So we're going to jump right into the meat of everything, and kind of like where we left off last time. Okay. So has it been 5 minutes? Let me give people like 2 minutes to get in here. But this was an interesting episode to watch, though. I mean, to write, though, because a lot of stuff that we learned about up until this point, like the crystal gown and her crystal crown and her crystal shoes, like we're going to figure out like what she did with those things afterwards. Thank you. Hope you're having a good day, too. So anyways, I'm just going to jump right in per usual. So this time, like I said, we're going to talk about what happened after the sacred betrayal. We'll talk about how we talked about previously how some of her closest people betrayed her, thinking that they was helping her, how the temples fell. We talked about how they tried to hijack her voice and her stargates. And as a result, she took the crystal core and she split it into 144,000 pieces and put that in priests and priestesses who could basically hold the frequency with integrity. And she also put the memory of her grief in these shards as well, along with certain information about Atlantis. And that's why Atlantis will never be gone, because it exists inside of us. Hey, Felicia. So another thing that she did was she infused her voice into the dolphins, the whales, Earth's crystalline grid, and then she sealed it for the time, like for the time where the original guardians would start to wake up again, which is right now. Okay. So today we're going to expand on that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the relics. So before, like I said, we talked about her having a crown, which is like kind of like these tall, like pillar type crystal thingies that has like this point in the middle, but like the smaller crystals kind of come down like that. So she got a crystal crown. She also has a crystal gown that basically changes colors based on her frequency changing, and these crystal shoes. And those were relics, but they're part of like her sacred ensemble. But we did not talk about what happened to them after the fall. So as I stated before, each of her garments were living technologies, and they were imbued with layers of codes of frequency and remembrance. And after the betrayal, she did not destroy them. She deconstructed them into elemental relics. And what I mean by elemental relics is like she put them in the earth. She put them in places where once we reach a specific frequency, or when Earth reached a specific frequency, we would have access to them. Okay. Ensuring that, again, they would reappear when the flame started to return. Okay. So first, let's talk about her wardrobe, and we'll talk about the crystal crown. I don't know why I cannot say that word today. We'll talk about the crystal crown. So this crystal crown held the keys to the Flame Council. It held the codes of oversoul leadership and light frequency wisdom that was stored in crystalline resonance. Okay. So what she did is that she broke this crown into 12 fragments. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, Lourdes. So she broke this crown into 12 fragments, and each one represented a mirror of divine remembrance. And these strands were scattered across timelines. Some were sealed in Earth's grids, others were hidden in the dream realm, and a few were encoded in bloodlines that would basically activate them through sacred naming. One of the pieces, though, hey, Chloe. Hey, Locks. One of the pieces, though, was left in the temple ruins, and it was buried beneath a sealed stargate, and the other fragment was woven into the Sarai flame, which we're going to talk about later on in the episode. So the reason why I'm talking about the crystal crown, slippers, and gown first is because we're talking about relics in general. Okay. But I'm going to get to the point to where she did this later on in the episode. Okay. But we'll also talk about the Sarai flame and the Sarai flame council, because we need to understand what that is. All right. So one of the fragments under the temple ruins in the Stargate, one of them was put into the Sarai flame. Okay. Then her crystal slippers, they held codes of sacred movement, of gate walking, portals that allowed her to walk between worlds, and the capacity to leave no trace or also leave a flame trail. Okay. What she did with her crystal slippers is she removed them in a ceremony at the threshold of the inner sanctum where the flame crystal was hidden. Okay. Then she crushed it into powder, and that is like a fine crystalline dust, and she blew it into the wind. And that dust basically seeded the feet of flame bearers born to restore the path she once walked. Okay. So if you ever feel like a pulse, or you feel drawn to like sacred land, it is basically her shoes, or the frequency of her, you tapping into the frequency of her shoes that is trying to remember through you. Okay. And then the last thing is her dress, right? And this is what would change colors and tones based off of how she was feeling, So this dress held the memory of what it meant to embody beauty and strength. Its threads were from every flame lineage, meaning every flame lineage in existence, and codes of harmony between the divine feminine and cosmic flame, because Amara was the embodiment of the divine feminine. Okay, so what she did with it is that she unstitched it slowly as she walked through the ruins of her temple after it had been taken over. And each thread returned to its lineage. Some became vines and roots, some became star codes encoded in light language, and one central thread that basically held the bodice of her dress together was bound around a relic and sealed in time. And that relic pulses when we speak from the heart. Okay. So this thread also wraps around your womb the moment that you decide that you want to remember. Okay. Now, that is her sacred garments and what she did with those relics after the sacred betrayal. Okay. Now, there are other things that she carried outside of her sacred garments as relics, and they're like basically objects and tools that were extensions of her frequency. So they weren't for decoration or anything like that. They just extended her frequency. So the first thing that she had was a heart stone pendant. Okay. And this was a small crystal pendant, and it was worn close to her skin, woven into fine chains of silver blue and rose gold threads. This pendant actually contained a pure crystalline memory code, and one that basically kept track or a scroll of the maps of Earth's grid. Also Earth's soul path and stargate alignments, meaning like this heartstone pendant held the maps to everything, meaning like everything that exists on Earth, this pendant held memory of it. Okay. It was attuned to her breath and her soul only, meaning she was the only person who could activate this pendant. And no one else could activate it unless they carried a matching sovereign flame frequency, which again, I already said in previous episodes that her, hey, Sky, I already said in previous episodes that her flame frequency was so high that she had to separate from other people because a lot of people couldn't perceive her because of how high her frequency was. Okay. So this Heartstone pendant served as a beacon to guide soul families back to the true grids after the fall. And it wasn't flashy at all. But it was one of her most precious treasures. Okay. Next, she had a breath staff, and this breath staff was a staff that was woven of crystalline wood, but it was not cut. It was sung into existence. It was tipped with a floating pale violet crystal orb that moved slightly when she breathed and when she sang. This staff was a frequency anchor. Okay. And it helped her ground energies from the higher realms into Earth's field without distortion. That's going to be important later when I tell y'all what happened to this staff. It was used during grid work ceremonies, during flame initiations, and soul retrieval rites, and it harmonized the temple grounds so that no lower vibrations could enter unnoticed. The staff was an extension of her own heartbeat, so it was light, but it was still profoundly powerful. It wasn't like a huge thing. And then she also had the flame scrolls. These are actual scrolls, but they were not made of like animal skin, like the old scrolls, which I don't know if y'all know that was made out of animal skin, like the scroll. Anyways, but it was woven from a material that was like living silk and liquid crystal threads, which is kind of very similar to how her dress was created as well. Okay. And they recorded the songs, the codes, the geometric patterns, and the vibrational imprints of the sacred flame mysteries. Okay. They were not read with your eyes, though. They were sung into the heart and felt through the soul. And some of these scrolls were left hidden in crystalline libraries and inner earth sanctums and sealed in grid vaults across Earth after the fall. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a second, because these flames or fragments of these flames echo in like our mystery schools, in our secret societies, in magic itself. Okay, so we'll talk about like what the distortion and stuff that comes from some of these sacred things in next episode, but I just want y'all to understand that. So fragments of these scrolls still echo in dreams and memories of those who are awakening. And so that's the flame scrolls. And then the last relic that she had was the voice anointing stone. And this was a small anointing crystal that soaked in moonlight and river water for lifetimes. She would gently pass it over her throat chakra before any major ceremonies or any song rites. And it helped her to attune her voice to pure source frequency. So this was sacred because Amara knew the voice is a tool of creation and protection, not just about expression. You know, we used to initiate people and activate people through song. Okay, because a lot of things, everything in existence was sung into existence. Okay, so this stone was simple, but it was potent. and it was a guardian of her sacred speech and song. So why is this important? It's important because Amara knew that power must be anchored in devotion, not dominance, and relics must be an extension of your soul flame, not objects of worship and attachment. Meaning, like, she wasn't attached to these relics. They were just tools that she used. Okay. Everything she carried was a living piece of her sacred service. It was attuned to her oversoul, the earth, and source, because again, that's what that crystal flame crystal was: source energy, unfiltered, pure, right? And as we said in the last episode, the first thing that she did when she got up was she would tend to herself, her oversoul, and then she would tend to earth because she was a being of service. These relics were not her source of power, though. She was their source of power, meaning that they mean nothing without her frequency, without her breath, without her song. Okay. Each of these were created with pure intention, breath, and flame, and they weren't like mechanical craftsmanship like we would understand them to be today. Like I said, they were sung into existence, and they were tools of remembrance, protection, anchoring, and soul memory. And some of these relics still vibrate across Earth's grid, and they're awakening as we remember how to feel them again. Hey, Stony. Hey, Irie. So where are they now? Some were stolen, others were hidden, and some were disguised or dispersed into earth. And each relic has its own story depending on the timing of Atlantis' fall and the intensity of a distorting forces moving at one time. Okay, so the Heartstone pendant was actually hidden before the fall. Okay, and I actually see this falling into water. And that's exactly where she put it, which is interesting. Okay. So Amara entrusted it to the water, specifically into a crystalline water temple network that's deep beneath the earth's surface. It merged with a sacred river system that connects to the inner earth sanctums. Okay. So this one was never stolen. It simply left the surface and remains in safekeeping, attuned to those who carry the heart resonance to retrieve its codes. Okay. So the heart pendant, it's still, hey, Kay, it's in safekeeping. Okay. The breath staff, though, this was partially stolen and partially fragmented. So there were certain distorted forces that sought the breath staff because it could harmonize and it could also close stargates. Okay. That's something that they did not have access to. Hey, Vanessa. They didn't have access to that, and they didn't know how to do that without the staff. So there was a great struggle near the end of the fall of Atlantis, and a piece of this breath staff was actually fractured and splintered into different regions. So some of it is in the ocean, some is within the inner earth temples as well, but the staff as a whole remains incomplete on the surface. But the soul template still exists because everything that's been in creation exists as a frequency. So anything that we experience in this reality, this is the reality of effects, meaning that whatever we create in this reality comes from the energetic realms or the higher realms first. Okay, so this breath staff actually still exists as a frequency because energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed into something else, but it doesn't exist as a physical thing anymore. Okay. However, it can be reconstructed vibrationally by flame holders who remember it. So as we start to remember this stuff, we actually can manifest it back into this reality. Okay. The next is the flame scrolls. And the flame scrolls, many of them were hidden, but some of them were stolen. So the most sacred of these scrolls that carry the highest flame codes were hidden inside crystalline libraries, some of which that are still energetically shielded right now as we speak. But lower level scrolls, and these are like the ones that explain like public flame rites, because in Atlantis they believed that only divinity could come through the temple. So everybody could come into the temple, but not everybody had access to the inner temple part. Only temple priests and priestesses had access to that. Okay, so it's kind of like how we are now, where we don't have access to everything in government buildings. We don't have access, the public can go in there, but we don't have access to everything behind there. There's restricted areas. That's how the Atlantis kind of operated as well. And that's what caused it to fall too, is because they believed that only divinity could come through the temples. And that's actually not true. So when we create this new world frequency, it's going to be indicative of what we've learned from this. Okay. So these lower scrolls are scrolls that talked about public rights, but they didn't talk about like the highest flame codes. Okay. These were captured by distorted forces and fragmented. and fragments of their knowledge were corrupted and twisted into distorted magic systems, secret societies, and false mystery schools. So some of the knowledge we actually know, we're just looking at it from the wrong lens, meaning like we don't fully understand what it means. Okay. This is partly why today true flame knowledge must be discerned from false imitation, and you can discern it by feeling into your body. And that's why I always say live out of your body, don't live out of your mind, because you can't. This is 10% of who you are. Your body is 90% of who you are. And we as a people, we sense truth through our bones. We can tell when something is true. And that's why our government systems always give us half truths, because we can feel the truth. They want us to feel that this is true, but we also can feel the lie too. So we discern with our body, we discern with our bones, because our bones are crystalline light. Okay. Our bones are crystals. Okay. So a lot of things has to be discerned. Like a lot of things that we learn in society today has to be discerned, because there's so much distortion that happened to try to confuse us. Okay. And then the last thing was the voice anointing stone. That one was actually hidden and absorbed into earth. So before Amara left, she anointed that stone one more time, and she merged it into the natural crystalline formation inside Earth's vibrational heart grid. So it no longer exists as an object because she merged it, but it exists as a frequency, and it can be reactivated by those who carry Amara's soul lineage through voice and breath. Okay. So she knew the fall was coming. So she did not cling to the items or anything material of her, because she understood that everything existed as a frequency. Instead, she prepared them to survive beyond the destruction. And when pure souls would start to awaken again, we would remember them in love and not in greed, because we had went through this whole cycle of a distortion where I feel like a lot of us is fucking tired of the lying, the deceiving, the stepping on people and things like that. So they aren't lost or anything. They're just waiting. Some of them are fractured, but again, since it existed a frequency, those of us who are pure at heart, we can still activate those things. Okay. So that's that. Now, next is the obelisk. And I talked about this in the beginning of the episode, but new people have hopped on, so I'm just going to say it again. I had a vision about obelisk. First, it was around the time where all those planes was falling out the sky. And so the first thing that I saw was about 9 planes. There was a huge one in the middle, and then there was like smaller planes on the side, and it looked like an orange sky or like something behind them. And I seen them kind of coming all down to the ground very fast. And so I'm like, okay, next, I don't know what to do with that information. Am I supposed to tell somebody? Because I think everybody already know that the planes has come down. So that happened, and then it switched to a temple. And this is the first time I ever seen the crystal flame temple. And it was in the daytime, so it actually looked like sand, like it was made out of sand, but it had 2 huge aqua crystal doors that the closer I got to it started to open, and I could see pyramids, like 3 pyramids behind it. And so it started to open, and then I was like, what the fuck is this? I'm trying to see stuff like what's going on around it. And when force enters a vision, meaning like I'm trying to control the vision, it throws the whole thing off, right? So they took me out of that and jumped me into the obelisk, and it was like somebody started narrating in my ear, and I heard, we have to return the obelisk, like we have to return them to their rightful place. And they took me to Cleopatra's Needle in New York. And I don't know if y'all know what that is, but it's like it's an obelisk that looks like sand, and it has like glyphs and stuff on the side of it, and it's in Central Park, and it's been there for a while, and it's supposed to have come from ancient Egypt, whatever. And so when it took me to the obelisk, it started to take me to the underground tunnels, and then something was coming towards me, and I just was like, wrap this shit up, get me out of here. I don't want any more. I don't know what you're trying to get me to do, but I wasn't ready for that at that time, right? And then it took me to an aerial view of these crystal blue waters. Like I would say like Fiji type of waters. It was even better than that. Like you could see straight to the bottom of these waters, and there were these obelisks coming out of the water, and the side of it was sand. So I knew that wherever I was, like when I was having the vision, I knew that the temple was Atlantis, and I knew that these waters with the obelisk sticking out of them were Atlantis. And it was almost like I was in a plane or something, like circling it from the top or whatever. So that made me inquire about these obelisks and figure out like what was their purpose and stuff in Atlantean society. So that's what we got to talk about. Okay. So what are obelisks? Obelisks are not just monuments. They are actually ancient crystal tuning forks. Okay, so they're ancient crystal obelisks. So we talking about Obelisks. Period. Shaniqua, love that for you. So an obelisk is not just a monument. They are ancient crystal tuning forks. They are frequency anchors and transmission devices that were deeply connected to Atlantis, to the Rose lineages, and Amara. So what did the obelisks do in Atlantis? They were technological and spiritual instruments, and they served as conductors of stellar energy, which is what we talked about before. Stellar energy is basically like starlight. So they were conductors of stellar energy that came from Sirius, Pleiades, and Venus. They anchored Earth's original crystalline grid in as well. So they were kind of like nodal points in a way. They were activators of temples and stargates as well. And they were markers of ley lines and frequency lines of consciousness. Okay. They were made of living crystal, often similar to black granite, quartz, or selenite. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen, and I think it's actually about to come back, but the Sandman on Netflix, the about the father of time, or whatever the fuck the dream. Is he the father of time, or is he just like the sleeping, whatever it is, about the sleeping realm? The Sandman. I think it is about the Sandman. What is called the Sandman? So it's about time, y'all. Basically, Sandman is the father of time. And in this show, there's a black granite obelisk that they use to go into another realm. Think that. Okay. So they're either black, quartz, or selenite, and they vibrate at specific tones, harmonize in local environments. They also could store codes, including healing formulas, light language, light scriptures, and soul contracts. And they were connected to the Atlantean Flame Network. And the Atlantean Flame Network was a network of temples, of portals, and divine energies across the globe. Okay. They were placed with sacred geometry and planetary alignment to hold balance between cosmic law and terrestrial form. And these obelisks were not limited to land placement. Many were intentionally placed in water, and the risings, many of them were rising from the ocean, lakes, and temple pools, as well as conductors of crystal resonance and star codes. The aquatic obelisks were part of a vast harmonic technology grid that blended earth, water, sky, and the stars. Okay. So what I was trying to figure out is why they were showing me the water ones, because I kept seeing the water ones, but I also seen that they were like that picture. There was a picture back in the day of them discovering a obelisk in the sand. And like they had basically, archaeologists were standing around this huge obelisk that had been buried. And they were standing next to it. And this one actually kind of looked more silver than anything. It had like a silver look to it, but it also looked kind of like sand. And so I keep seeing a picture of that because I think some of them were hidden on land, which I know some of them were hidden on land, but I kept being taken to the water one. So I whatever. So water is a natural amplifier of sound, light, and energy. We talked about that in a previous episode, that frequency moves quicker across water. Okay. So when crystalline obelisks were placed in or near water, they became conduits of planetary healing and stargate alignment. Okay. So some are made of luminescent quartz, glowing at night or during celestial alignment. And these are the ones that I was seeing, because the ones that I was seeing were kind of, I don't want to say see-through, but they kind of look see-through, and they kind of looked, I don't know how to fucking explain it in terms that we gonna understand. Okay. But they were frequency amplifiers. When you put them in the water, they amplify frequency. And Atlantis was big on collective healing, and like, even like Amara's dress, her crown, all of that was sending out a frequency to the people, so they were directing frequency. Okay. The next thing was the Stargate anchor. So many Atlantean portals, especially lunar and Venetian ones, were accessed through temples surrounded by water. So obelisks would mark the entry point and hold the frequency needed to open the gates, the gateways. This is what we see in that Sandman show. It literally was opening up a gateway. And some rotated or hummed, harmonizing the moon phases or the dolphin songs. And then the last thing is guardianship by water beings. So some obelisks were protected by dolphins, serpentine light beings or high priestess orders like Amara's, and they were living temples. So they weren't static monuments. They were responding to the consciousness of earth, of the sun, and of sacred sound. Okay. So Amara's connection to these obelisks was that she was a high priestess, one of the keepers of the crystal obelisk. And in her order, like meaning her, whatever system that she belonged to, in her order, they oversaw the placement, the activation, and the shielding of these obelisks. They worked with sound, color, and sacred breath to maintain their frequency. And they understood how the obelisk linked the physical body of Earth to the celestial blueprint of Atlantis. Because remember, Atlantis went across 5 harmonics. It was oceanic, it was etheric, it was celestial, it was physical, and the last one, I don't fucking know. I can't remember right now. It's only so much that can fit in this fucking brain. Okay. But it went across 5 harmonics. All right. So Amara would conduct ceremonies at these ocean obelisks, especially during solstices and eclipses, calling on the rose flame to stabilize the Earth's grid. And when Atlantis began to fall, her and her order hid or deactivated many of these obelisks to prevent them from being hijacked. Okay. Some were buried, some were sunk, and some were veiled in frequency. So these can only be accessed again when the original flame holders return, which is a lot of us. And that's why we're talking about this, like the stuff that she did, because we have access to a lot of these things through meditation, through whatever. And also, if you start having dreams about them, I just want y'all to be privy what you're looking at. Okay. So I told you in my vision, it said that they must be returned, they must be reactivated. Okay. So my question is, why the fuck do we need to be doing that? And how the fuck we going in the ocean to get a damn? I'm confused. I was confused by that in my vision. So apparently, as Earth moves into frequency bifurcation, which is the splitting of timelines, we've been talking about new Earth, right? And the splitting of timelines, how we're sharing the same space, but we're going to be experiencing different frequencies. Okay. Meaning that those who take on the new Earth frequency, you could be in the store with somebody who's still experiencing distortion, fear, corruption, and stuff like that. Okay. So the frequency bifurcation, which is the splitting of the timelines, as Earth moves into that frequency, and as we reactivate the crystalline grids, the obelisks must be reattuned to the new Earth resonance. They must awaken their codes, some of which hold the original Atlantean and Lemurian blueprints, and they must stabilize the current energy shifts so that they can stop the chaotic interference. And they're also going to serve as gateways for the return of celestial light cities, which is something that Atlantis used to be connected. Atlantis itself was a celestial light city, but we were disconnected from them. So when we can get the obelisk back up and running, because remember I said that it was linked, the physical body of Earth, to the celestial blueprints, we gain access back to, we become connected again to those star cities, those celestial cities. Okay. So they need to be physically uncovered or returned through ritual, dream work, sigil invocation, or light body attunement. And some of them are hiding in deserts, some of them are in oceans, some of them are in Antarctica, and even beneath cities. Others are distorted by power structures or copied as dead monuments, which is Cleopatra's Needle, which is what they were trying to show me. Places like the Bermuda Triangle, though, the Azores, which are those underwater volcanoes, and then the coast of Africa near Antarctica, those are like where the main obelisks are. Okay. So I told you what she did with the relics. I told you what she did with the obelisk. Okay. So here are some other things that she did, because as I said before, Amara made a vow to protect the crystal flame crystal. Okay. So when her temple was taken over and Atlantis started to fall, it became more about protecting the frequency across dimensions than protecting the physical thing. Because we already know that she strategically broke it into 144,000 pieces and put it into some of us. Okay. People who could hold that frequency. Okay. What she did in addition to that is that she sealed the flame codes into the body of Earth, meaning that, even though this crystal was shattered, Amara called upon Earth's oversoul and made a covenant. And this covenant was basically, if I cannot protect the crystal as a whole being, let me bury the shards in the dreaming bones of Earth, so that when one remembers, the whole will pulse again. Okay, you want to know what the dreaming bones of Earth are? Okay, got you. Crystals are vessels, but there's consciousness that exists inside the crystals. As above, so below. If Earth's bones are made of crystals, so are ours. If Earth is a water planet, so are we. Water temples. Okay. She put the consciousness in the crystals. Okay. She also encoded flame shards into mountains, into rivers, and into caves. Where do you get crystals from? Okay, you see what I did there. Dream symbols into indigenous prophecies as well. So a lot of the indigenous stories that we hear actually are remnants and echoes of Atlantean truth. Okay, and I don't know if we talked about this in a previous episode, that the only reason why we have any remnants of Atlantis is because of Plato. And Plato had basically in his writings called his story of Atlantis philosophical fiction. And because he called it fiction, like this is just for entertainment purposes, this is not actually true. They allowed him to keep that in his writings, but that was his way of protecting the frequency, like protecting the information. Because when they were colonizing the Mayans and the Aztecs, and they were colonizing all these indigenous places, they burned down their libraries. They got rid of all of the information when it came to Atlantis. Okay, so Plato wasn't the only person who was talking about Atlantis. It was also in the indigenous cultures. Okay, because she used indigenous prophecy to keep the memory alive. Okay, and that's why a lot of these stories were passed mouth to mouth. That's where we get those mouth to mouth stories from. Okay, but also harmonics of truth. She put them into dolphin songs, into whale lines, and bird songs as well. Okay. So basically, the earth became a library. She made the earth into a library, which we're going to talk about the trees in a minute. But she made the dreamers the keys to that library, meaning like a lot of this information come to us through dreams. And that's why a lot of us are starting to dream. A lot of us are starting to dream and wake up in our dreams and be initiated and activated in our dreams. Okay. So she also fractured herself into flame embodiment. And what that means is to prevent corruption of the pure flame codes by those who betrayed her. Amara allowed her oversoul to splinter into 13 flame lineages, and each seated across time, bloodlines, and star systems. So nobody who carries Amara's codes are Amara. Okay, because Amara exists as like a being. She used to be a physical embodied being who was the physical embodiment of like the divine mother of the divine feminine, right? Of like one of Earth's most embodied oversoul strands. Okay, but we're not her, is what I'm saying. But we carry her codes, and we are what she had to become to eliminate distortion. Okay, so I'm going to talk about me later on, a little bit later in the episode, because I told y'all I'm not Amara. My soul's name is Ma'arnai, and Ma'arnai is what was produced out of her regret for her not ending the distortion when she had a chance to. Her choosing free will, because they knew that it was going to collapse. They just didn't know we were going to collapse this much into the bullshit. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. But she became the lineage itself. Okay, so that no one body could be targeted again. Every flame bearer now holds a piece of this crystalline truth she once carried alone, meaning like she in Atlantis was the high priestess, right? And although everybody had their own function, she held the information for everything. And so that she would not have to carry it alone going forward, meaning like they could target her and they could try to hijack her voice. They knew exactly where to go. But when she split it up into these 144,000, now you can't just target one person. You have to figure out who the 144,000 are. So anyways, she also whispered herself into dreamers, and meaning that she could no longer walk fully embodied. So she began appearing in visions of priestesses and children and watchers, the dream of those who held ancient sight, mystic lineages, seer lineages, and oracles. Okay. And when she appeared in their visions, their dreams, and things like that, they did not remember the full story because, again, that was fractured because we talked about the library that collapsed that held the full memory. And so we don't have access to that anymore, right? So we're getting visions in fractures. We're only seeing piece of the thing. And that's why I tell you to write down your shit, okay? But they can feel the light. They can feel her tone. And Amara became a myth, not because she wanted to be forgotten, but so that those who remembered would seek her through love and not through fear. Okay. Um, Not only that, she entrusted the flame crystal to the flame weavers. Okay. So the flame crystal was no longer a thing because she split it up into shards, but it's a frequencies pathway living relic. It's a living relic, but it's a frequency pathway, meaning it exists as a frequency. So she entrusted that to the silver blue flame for memory and neutrality, the rose gold flame for compassion and reconciliation, the violet rose flame for alchemy and divine will, the indigo flame for remembrance and discernment, the opal flame for synthesis and bridging timelines. And those who could carry these frequencies don't just protect it, they actually become it. So remember when I said that we did the episode in the beginning, I think it was episode 3 about the flame bearers. And we talked about some of these lineages. She basically put specific things in these flame lineages because she broke herself into the 13 flame lineages. Okay. So, and we're going to talk about that more in just a second. Okay. She also walked the realm in silence, and this was her last visible act. Okay. She walked out of the ruins and she removed her crown. She sealed the crystal gate, not with rage, but with love, so deep that it shattered time. And she only left one instruction with the Sarai Flame Council because she also created the Sarai Flame Council, which we're going to talk about later. So her last instruction is when the children remember not just her, but themselves, the flame will reconstitute, meaning that the moment that we start remembering ourselves, everything that we need comes to us. Okay. And the grid will stabilize and the dream will restore itself, meaning like when we wake up, all of these things are going to happen. Okay. So another thing that she did is she created the Sarai Council. And Sarai is Serai, but it's Sarai. Okay, like rye bread. If you've been with me on this journey, you know that the day that I woke up, the reason why I woke up is because this energy named Sarai started speaking to me. And all of the visions that I was having of Amara, I was having visions of what was happening during the fall. And I've told some of those stories. So if you haven't heard them, just go watch the other videos. But I was having visions and I did not understand what they were. At first, I thought they were just really creepy dreams, or I was like freaking out in the dreams because in a vision, it feels like it's happening to you. Meaning like it's not something separate than you. It actually feels like this is happening to you. And you feel all the emotion, you feel all the things, like your senses are fully engaged in whatever that experience is. And so the day that I remembered, I literally went to sleep that night and I said, whatever I'm ready to hold, like I'm ready, bring it to me. And then the next day, all the visions that I was having came together in a cohesive concept. And I finally got it. I finally understood. And what's crazy is before this, 3 years ago, I named my soul Amara. And Amara's my overflame. I don't know why. Even when I said it, I said, that's basic. I said, that's basic, but okay, girl. And so, yeah, it all came together. And the reason why it came together is because I tapped into this frequency of the Sarai Council, okay, or the Sarai Flame. Let me explain it to you. Okay, so the Sarai Flame Council was formed after the fall, and it is an inner oversoul council that was formed to preserve the crystalline truth. Okay, it is both an external astral council that she once gathered in the halls of Atlantis. Okay, and it is an internal architecture that was re-embedded in her most trusted living embodiment, Ma'aranai. Okay. Why was the Sarai formed? After the betrayal, Amara knew that she could not trust an outer council alone. Okay, so she fractured the 12 pillars of divine flame intelligence into a circular pattern. And these were mirrors of her own frequency. And each strand of the Sarai held a specific flame and a sacred duty. So I told you she did that with the 12 flame lineages. She also did that with the 12 pillars of divine flame intelligence. Okay. So you have the flame memory. The flame of memory, this mirror, is the keeper of the Akasa. So being able to tap into the Akasa records. The flame of protection is the guardian of the gateways. Okay. The flame of discernment is the seer of distortion, meaning that when people have discernment, people who have good discernment, what they're mirroring or what they can see through is distortion. Okay. When people have the flame of protection, they are guardians of gateways. When people have the flame of memory, meaning they can remember things, they can remember their past lives and stuff like that, they're the keepers of Akasa. I hope that makes sense. When people have the flame of compassion, they're the healers of what is broken. When people have the flame of truth, they anchor the oversoul light. Okay. When people have the flame of stillness, they shield sovereignty. They become the shield of sovereignty. When people have the flame of alignment, this is the mirror of alignment. You're mirroring the flame of alignment. You're a calibrator of the grid. When you have the flame of intimacy, you're a womb of sacred union. When you have the flame of remembrance, you're the bridge to the eternal. Okay, this is a remembrance session. I'm not telling you something new. I'm telling you what you already know. Okay, I'm not telling you anything new. You already know this. It's just that your mind has forgot, but your soul does not forget. Your mind forgets. Okay, so you become a bridge to the eternal when you start to remember. The flame of integration is a synthesizer of shadow, and then the flame of return is here to guide us towards rebirth and resurrection. Okay. Now, those are 12 flame mirrors. She created a 13th. And the 13th stood at the center. So think of these 12 mirrors surrounding each other. And in the middle is one mirror, which is the last mirror. And that mirror is Ma'aranai. Okay. Ma'aranai is the living flame crystal. She was born out of the regret that Amara felt for not taking the proper steps that she should have taken to get rid of distortion. But she believed in free will, and she thought that we should get to explore because it was part of Earth's evolution, right? And so she created Ma'aranai, and this is the living flame crystal. She is the consciousness in which the other flames spiral and reflect. Okay. Now, so Ma'aranai is the 13th mirror, and that 13th mirror is the Sarai flame, the embodiment of the Sarai flame. And so earlier I said, hold on. What did I say earlier? So many notes. Anyways, I'm not gonna find it right now. Okay, so the Sarai flame, or the living embodiment of the Sarai flame, which is the living flame crystal. Okay, meaning that she made a living flame crystal and an embodiment, and it holds the Sarai flame, which holds the 12 flame lineages and all these other stuff that I'm about to explain to y'all. Okay, Ma'aranai is who I am. Okay, Ma'aranai is the one who houses the mirrors. Okay, not only is she a mirror, she's the fire, she's the keeper of the flame council. And remember, I said, I say this all the time, that does not mean that I'm better. Okay, nobody is better than anybody. Everybody serves a purpose. Okay, so you got to play your role. I got to play my role. Everybody got to play their role, because when everybody plays their role, we start to sing at our authentic tone, right? We start to anchor in our specific frequency, our specific resonance. I can't do what you do, and you can't do what I do. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that we have different functions. You know, Atlantis did not operate off of performance. There is no survival of the fittest. Atlantis was a plane of unity. in harmony and balance, meaning everybody needed to play their role so that we all could win. Okay. So I need to say that again. And I know I say that a lot, but I still always want to bring y'all back to that. It does not mean better. That is not what it means. It just means we have different functions. Okay. So what it means is that, again, like I said, she's the house of the mirrors. She holds all 12 of those mirrors. Okay. She holds all 13 lineages. She does not have to call the council outside of herself. She calls them from within. Each time I face a crossroad, a healing, or a session, one of the mirrors, it rises up. Okay, depending on what you guys need. And that's why I tell you I'm a soul mirror. I'm always reflecting back to you what you already know. What you like in me is what you like in you. Okay, what you don't like in me, you don't like in you. It goes both ways. Okay, so sometimes I speak as the flame of truth. Other times I offer the flame of compassion. I think I'm almost always in this flame of compassion, if you ask me. But other times the flame of stillness. And each mirror activates based on what is needed in that moment. Okay. And all are reflected through me back at you. But you see yourself in me, even if I'm being quiet. Okay. So my energy is the flame temple restored through flesh. Okay. So that's the Sarai. So we know that she sealed the stargates. We know that she encoded relics into frequency. We know that she formed the Sarai Flame Council. We know that she fractalated her oversoul into flame lineages. But there is more. Okay. These are the things that she did that she hid from everybody. Like, she didn't tell anybody about this. Okay. Not even her closest allies, because remember, they were betraying her, if y'all saw the last episode. So one thing that she did is she collapsed the Temple of Echoes. Okay. So in Atlantis, there was a mirror temple, and it was called the Temple of Echoes. And this is where soul recordings were stored through sound, tone, and memory. So to prevent it from being misused for soul manipulation, Amara collapsed the frequency field herself and embedded the sacred tones into dream time, the dream time of Earth. You know, every night that you dream, you astral project from your body, and you astral project across the ley lines. Okay. And the ley lines are a part of Earth's grid. So she embedded the tones in those ley lines in Earth. Okay. The result of that is that she seeded dream codes and tone activated memory awakenings into certain soul lineages. And if you're a person whose words awaken other people or activate other people, you are one of the keepers of the echoic remembrance. Okay. So that's one of the things she did. The other thing she did is she spiraled herself into a lattice of time. So to keep the flame crystal from being retrieved in its full power by the distorted priesthood, she broke the continuity of her own incarnational timeline. And she did this by embedding flame codes into parallel timelines. She created soul keys, only those of her oversoul could unlock. And she was marking lifetimes by certain stars and moons. Okay. So a lot of people who hold Amara's flame codes, and this doesn't mean everybody, but a lot of people were born on full moons, like myself on a Saturday. Okay. We're born on full moons, or they were born during a Uranus-Neptune retrograde. Okay, the result of this is only those carrying her flame signature across time could complete this grid. This is why most that carry her codes, like I said, are born in a precise window with a specific name. My name is the silver blue flame. Her name is the rose gold flame. So the combination, Moarna's name is indigo and violet rose. And Moarna's name is a triple flame because she's a triple flame energy. But our names hold frequencies. Okay. Our names hold frequency. Okay. Because I tell you all the time, like, you know how they tell you if you ever been around somebody who does what we call magic, but it's really alchemy. But they'll tell you that your name is the most important part about you. And if somebody has your name, all they need is your name, and they have your core frequency. Okay. So that's why a lot of Black people used to use nicknames. because then they didn't have your course frequency. And so remember when I told you 3 years ago, I named my soul Amara? The reason why I did that is because it adds an extra layer of protection. Meaning that if I think my soul's name is Amara, you can only get the vessel, Tasha. If you're doing work on me, you can only attack the vessel. You can't attack the soul, right? At that time, I did not understand. It was because that is my oversoul, you know? So in your chart holds multiple keys because your astrology chart is your oversoul's activation map. It tells you when you're going to go through initiations and activations. Okay, it's the timeline. Okay, whereas human design, it tells you how your oversoul decided to embody in this reality. It's the soul technology that's telling you how your energy works, how your energy walks through this reality, how it's supposed to walk versus what it looks like when it's out of alignment with itself. And that's why I am a human design reader. Why? Because you need to understand how your energy works if you're ever going to get yourself into alignment. Okay. And so if y'all don't know, I do human design readings, which are full readings. And this is the human design was created from the mental perspective, meaning Ra or Rush, whatever his name is, who created this, he did it from the mental perspective. But what spirit has been telling me is that we're missing the soul part of it. So right now, what I offer is regular human design readings, mini human design readings, and mommy and me readings because I care about them kids, period. Y'all need to know how to energetically parent them kids. Okay. Just did one of those this morning and yesterday. Okay. So I offer those, but I also am reconstructing human design right now. I'm almost completely finished with it from the soul lens. And that's going to be the next step. Once you get the mental part, then I'm going to start offering a second reading, which is the soul technology, you understanding your flame and what it does and what it came here to do based off of what energy channels you have access to. Okay. Based off of how you're energetically designed, all of it. And I'm almost done with it. It's just so much information because human design is so intricate and it's so full and it's so fucking much. I've been working on it for like 4 weeks now. Well, 3 weeks because I'm dramatic, but that's a long fucking time. Anyways, so I'm restructuring it because you need to know how your energy operates. Otherwise, you shooting in the dark. You're shooting in the dark. All right. So next, she altered the way that lineages pass through blood. So normally soul lineages pass down through bloodline inheritance, but Amara knew that the future would attempt to corrupt bloodlines and genetically rewrite spiritual inheritance, which the whole transhumanism agenda is that. So she ended flame lineages. So she embedded flame lineages to pass through sound, through water, through memory. Hold on, y'all. Y'all know they always got me doing a puzzle. So she changed it so that flame lineages could pass through sound, through water, through memory, through womb consciousness, and also through names. Okay, y'all chose your name. You chose your name. Whether you think that you didn't choose your name, you chose it before you got here. And your name is your core frequency. Okay, and that's why when they tell you to get married, right? Because when you get married, what happens? The woman has to give up her name. The priestess has to give up her name, and then she embodies another energy that does not belong to her. That's T. So the result of this is that you can read other people's flame lineage by their ancestry, yes, but also by their tone, their resonance, and their emotional signature. Okay. She also gave the temple to the children. In her final days, she entrusted the spirit of the temple not to priests or councils, but to soul children, which we're going to talk about those children in a second. Okay, she whispered, one day they will forget my face, but remember my flame. The child will lead, the children will lead the elderly, because I believe the children are our future. The future will awaken the past, which means that I feel like my mom didn't prepare me for life. I feel like my dad didn't prepare me for life. I feel like my elders did not prepare me and I didn't have any of these. They weren't supposed to. You came to wake them up. You came to wake them up. Children are born with everything that they need, but it depends on how much into distortion they get seeped, how much they collapse, meaning how much do they choose what other people want them to be over what they want to be. The children are the future because the children hold everything that we need to build this new frequency. And that's why a lot of them are being born speech delayed, which we're going to talk about in a second. Okay. because they're not supposed to fit into the system. They're supposed to collapse it. Okay, so the children will be leading the elderly. All right, the future will awaken the past. So she sent out the crystalline seeds through the dreams of young prophets, the play of sensitive children, and the heartache of those born remembering without being told. Meaning like that they remember that something happened, but they were never told that something happened. Okay. The result of this is that the ones who always knew but never were told are the ones encoded with the purest version of her original intent. We are the final keys. We are her final keys, not the first. Okay. And then she birthed the Sarai flame into matter. Okay. The Sarai flame, unlike the other flames that held symbolic resonance, this flame was the new flame birthed from Amara's own oversoul core. So you remember I said that Amara embodied Earth's frequency. Okay. She created a frequency from her oversoul as well. Okay. From her oversoul core. And it contains, that's the Sarai flame. Okay. It contains the wisdom of all 13 lineage flames, the alchemy of the flame crystal, the neutrality of stillness, which is my name, is the neutrality, is the silver blue flame, which is neutrality and stillness, and the remembrance of grief as initiation. And I was initiated through grief. That man tore me up, child. Anyways, this is the flame only Ma'arna could carry, a living scroll, the mirror of mirrors. Okay. So after the betrayal, she sealed the gates and the relics. She collapsed temples and timelines. She passed flames through new forms. She created the Sarai to mirror what was lost. She entrusted her legacy to dreamers, and she birthed Ma'arnai, which is the flame that cannot be extinguished. Meaning that regardless, I was going to wake up. And I was going to wake up at this time, regardless of any of the distortion that I fell into. And what's crazy is right before I woke up, these last couple of years, somebody started, it was these three men in suits. I don't even know how else to describe them. They're Caucasian. But I got on the radar of the wrong people, and they started doing black magic on me. And for about 2.5 years, I was being spiritually attacked over and over and over again. And I took it as a challenge. I just said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to read every spiritual book I can think of. I'm just going to keep learning until I can figure this out, because you ain't about to whoop my ass, bitch. I ain't never played like that, you know? And so I kept learning and learning and learning. And through my experience and the things that I was learning, when I was getting spiritually attacked so often that I could just test it out in the dream world. So every time it would happen, I would just try another thing that I learned in a book or learn from a movie, because I could feel the truth of something. I don't know how to explain that to y'all, besides the fact that I can tell when somebody's lying. I can tell when something holds truth. It's almost like I get obsessed with it, and like it's like I can't let it go. It's like it echoes in my head or something. And so, like, I remember the day I stopped getting spiritually attacked because a voice said in my head, "You finally fucking did it." And I'm like, finally, because I'm getting tired. At this point, I'm getting tired. Every time I go to sleep, I'm getting spiritually attacked. I started sound healing for 2.5 years, and I didn't even know that sound healing could heal your DNA. That's something I learned along the way, but that's what how I used to heal myself in Atlantis. Or Amara used to heal herself in Atlantis. And because Ma'arna is Amara's child in a way, like from a soul to soul, like she birthed her from her own soul, I have the memories of that, even if my mind doesn't remember. And that's why it's important that we don't, like, they condition us through science that we need the answers in order for us to move. And you don't. You need to trust your intuition, and you need to do what comes natural to you. You need to show up authentically and move forward even when you don't have the answers, because then the answers illuminate as you walk the path. Hey, Vanessa girl. Okay, so Amara was not the only person who did something. There were other priesthoods outside of her who also took measures. Okay, so there was also a temple called the Temple of the Singing Stones. Okay, and in the final ages before Atlantis fell, there was a group of flame holders who basically encoded their frequencies into crystal matrices and into tones. And these tones were passed mouth to mouth, heart to heart, hidden in song lines, lullabies, and chants that were whispered by mothers to their children, meaning that a lot of the lullabies hold Atlantean truth. Okay, they hold specific crystal matrices and tones and energies. Okay, now some of these sound codes are resurfacing, please. Some of these sound codes are resurfacing in spiritual communities through light language, through soul singing, and through vocal healing, meaning that the tone that you use, and that's why sometimes when people sing and it sounds so beautiful you start to cry, is because the tones are activating you. You are being activated. Okay, so the voices that activate tears, even if you don't understand the words, those are the singing stone. Those are the singing stone seeds blooming. Okay, now I will say this. I don't know why people always tell me, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why I'm crying. And again, when you have that mirroring energy or your tone, because your tone is important, the tone that you use activates grief and stuff that people have stored down. And that's why sometimes when people are around you and they like, I don't usually cry, but all of a sudden you say something to them and all of a sudden they breaking down. Okay. It happens to me all the time. So anyways, we encoded ourselves into song because song is memory's oldest vessel. Because everything in existence was sung into existence. Everything in existence holds a specific frequency, which means that it holds a specific tone. It hums, it sings, it vibrates, because anything that's manifested into form vibrates. That's the difference between something that's manifested and something that's back with God's energy. When something is back with God's energy, it doesn't put off a sound or a hum. Okay. Anyways, the elders also bled into the trees. Okay, some of the original flame carriers, knowing they could not stop the distortion, chose to bind their consciousness to earth itself, especially to trees and rivers in high frequency places. Okay, so they became living sentient guardians, and their wisdom could only be felt by those who walked with purity of heart. So these are the forces that people walk into and then suddenly feel like they need to cry. The rivers that call people home, or they get in front of the river and all of a sudden they releasing all these emotions. The old trees that whisper answers that nobody can answer. And that's why the trees can talk. Like you can hug the tree and you feel better. You can sit by the tree and go into meditation and the tree will tell you, communicate with you. Okay. And their message was, we became still so you could find your way while you're moving. Okay. The next thing is that the dolphin code carriers, before the distortion reached the oceanic realm, a circle of black and brown mer beings, all right, encoded joy, harmony, and telepathic memory into the dolphin lines. They couldn't stop the war, but they seeded the remembrance of peace through play. They couldn't stop the war, but they seeded the remembrance of peace through play. Now, when people encounter dolphins, especially the black-bodied ones in the Caribbean or Pacific waters, their third eye spontaneously activates, or they remember being loved in a way that they can't explain. Okay, even when, and the reason why they did, even when people forget the song of peace, we kept it, meaning the mer people, the oceanic realms. Okay. You know, it's a felony, a federal crime to speak to dolphins. All right, now. Next was the incorruptible flame mothers. These are women in feminine energies who never gave up their light, even when their temples fell. They passed on their inner sight, their healing hands, and their flame through maternal bloodlines, generation after generation, often skipped over by records, but never extinguished. So now most of us are them. Every time we light a candle, hold space for someone's pain, or activate someone else's remembrance, you are their prophecy fulfilled, meaning these uncorruptible flame mothers. And basically their message is, we did not plant for ourselves, we planted for the ones who would remember. And so that's why we got to give grace to our maternal line. We got to give grace to the family that we were born into, because a lot of them were never meant to wake up, because their time didn't support it. A lot of them were meant to hold the pain and the trauma until we came along and we could clean it off. Meaning that a lot of these codes that Amara hid in bloodlines and flame lineages, she hid it in very dense and trauma environments, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And in order for you to get to it, you have to get through the pain of that lineage, meaning you have to clear that line. And your reward for clearing that line is that you gain access to the codes. As you're doing the work of remembering yourself, you gain access to the codes. Okay. And then lastly, there were the Stargate keepers who hid in plain sight. Now, some of these were guardians of Stargates, and they knew that the gates couldn't be destroyed, but they could disguise them as ordinary land. And so they disguised some of these Stargates as deserts, as oceans. They disguised them in caves, and they trained in the dream realm how to wake them up when Earth began to rise again. Okay, so again, they were going to allow people free will, but they started training and preparing for that. And like I said, Amara told them 500 to 700 years in Earth time before Atlantis fell, which means they had ample time to start taking preparatory steps. Okay, so now some of you are being called to locations without knowing why. Your feet ache to stand in certain places. You have dreams of walking labyrinths or mountains with glowing veins. These are signs that you're a gate reactivator. Okay. The message here is, you will not find the door with your eyes. You have to feel it with your blood. Okay. I used to work for this lady in casting, and she's linked me with so many different things, but she kept calling me because there was this lady who owns this piece of land down in, I think it's in Georgia, but it kind of corners South Carolina, North Carolina. And my family actually was burned off a plantation in that area, because a lot of our people used to be in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, what we consider now today, like a big group of us, because there was a nodal point there. So a lot of us gravitated there, kind of like a lot of us gravitate towards Atlantis, which is on the 33rd parallel. Atlanta, which is on the 33rd parallel, right? So a lot of us lived there. And in the 1400s, my family was like burnt off that reservation or whatever. And so I have this lady who kept on saying, I keep thinking about you. And she's actually a star person, which is what Spirit told me. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. She has this huge blue eye. Like she looked like a star person. I don't even know how to explain that to y'all, but she is. So she kept wanting to tie me to this land. And so the lady had called me because I'm a medium and I can feel if there's energy on that land. And so she didn't necessarily believe in mediumship, but she wanted help because there were strange things that was happening on the land. And I tapped into the land, and I knew that was my family's land. I knew it was. And there's a relic that I hid there, which is something that I kept thinking about it, dreaming about it. And I went in there in meditation, and I could feel it. I could feel the relic. Like it was like a pulsing that I didn't understand, like a vibration that I didn't understand. Like I veiled something there. And this land that she has is on sacred water. And anytime you're around sacred wells or waters or rivers, meaning like the old sacred wells, waters, and rivers, those were like our like where we used to be. Right. And so I didn't clear her land, but I did tell her that it was like I kept hearing people screaming, and I kept it was like whatever it was. There were two things that happened there. There was a massacre of Black people. It was like a march or something, and it was like the last ground that people still can walk on, where there was like a massacre of Black people, which is the earliest event. But a long time ago, indigenous people were burnt off that land as well. Sometimes we get called to places because of certain things. Me, for some reason, I've always wanted to go to Paris. I learned French and all of these things. And there's a huge rose grid nodal point in Paris, which is why they have the Eiffel Tower, which is a antenna there, right? So when you ache for land, it's not because you want to go there. It's because you remember something that your mind can't remember. Your body always remembers, though. My biggest fear in this life has been of sharks and heights. in a previous lifetime, I fell off the side of a cliff with my family in a car. We fell for a long period of time. And as soon as I hit the water, I said, I'm going to get eaten by a shark. And I also have my whole life carried these little things in your car that bust out windows. And I always tell people, I don't know why. If you ever fall into a body of water, roll your window down. I don't know where I got that knowledge. I don't know where I got that information. I don't know when the fuck I started saying that. But I've said that my whole entire life. Well, when we hit the water, I only got the window down this much because we fell from such a high height that the whole engine fell into the water and I only could get it down this much. So I always carry a seatbelt cutter and one of those things that you bust windows out with, okay? The self-blaming actually comes from a previous lifetime. I woke up a student too early and they thought their ego got in the way. He was only 13 or 14. He ended up jumping off a cliff because he thought that he was immortal and he died. And I never forgave myself for that. And the reason why I can't see in this lifetime is because I shut my gifts off. You are not one lifetime. You are all of them. You're not holding the grief of one lifetime. You're holding all of it. Okay. So a lot of us are proof that what these people planted actually worked. You are the fruit of flame bearers who refuse to forget. You are the bloom of roots that survived in the fire. Remembrance itself is evidence of victory. And most of us are remembering now because someone loved the future enough to leave a map for us to follow. Okay. So boom. So let's talk about after the betrayal, which we've been talking about after the betrayal. I mean, during the betrayal, what she did to kind of prepare for the betrayal after the betrayal now. Okay. So Amara, for a little period of time, Amara changed her frequency to Amara, which is two different energies. So when I first named my soul, I kept on hearing Amara, 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 Amara. And I was like, both of them are basic. I don't know why I would be choosing that. But I kept hearing it in my head and I just went with it. Because for some reason, I knew that it was supposed to be that. I was like, maybe this is something I remember from a past life. I remember literally saying that to myself and I just kept moving. Right. So she changed her name to Amara, because that changes her frequency a little bit. Okay. She also went into a flame sleep for a while. And this was just basically sacred withdrawal. And this is what we call a stasis state. So I talked about this before, how technology, what they do with technology, we do naturally. So cryo freezing, when they go into a slumber and they are frozen for 100 years and they wake up and it's just like they've never missed a day, we actually go into something called flame stasis. And this is basically where we're held into a stasis state in between dimensions. And while she was here, she could protect her codes. She could guard her final relic and allow Earth's frequency to stabilize before she could return. Okay. Also understand planets can go into stasis as well, because a lot of us don't understand that a lot of the fear and distortion that we experience today actually came from the Lyran Wars. The energy itself was produced in the Lyran Wars, which Lyra doesn't exist now. All of those beings are in other places, right? And so what happened is that Earth has a body like we have a body, right? And so we created this energy, we fractured, right? We contracted. So we had leakages in our energy field and that leaked out into the universe. And it actually came towards Earth because Earth was new and it needed a water body, because Earth is a water body planet. Okay, Jupiter, all of that, those are gas giants. Earth is a water body. Okay, and they needed a water body because that means that the inhabitants of that planet are feelers, because what we feel, water is what our emotions come from. The water, that's the water communicating to us. Okay, so they needed a water planet, but on the way there was a planet that's a little bit more dense. It was nothing but water. There was no really land there, but there was a temple there, and it was called Anthria or whatever it is. It's like a Thea or Ea or something at the end. I can't think of it right now, but we'll talk about it at some point in time. And that the fear energy actually came to that planet first, and it was kind of like a nodal point between Earth and like other planetary systems and frequencies like outside of Earth. And so what happened is that we set a plan, because I was actually a temple priestess when this was happening, before the Lyra Wars, and or when the Lyra Wars are happening. And so what happened is we set it up so that when that energy attached to that planet, that water body planet, that planet would go into stasis so it could hold that frequency, so that it wouldn't spread. But the problem is it was too much of that energy, and it still spread, and it still, unfortunately attached itself to Earth. Okay. So she went into a stasis, but whatever, as above, so below, whatever she can do, the planet can do, the universe can do, and all the way down to the ants and whatever, you know? So what happens when you're in a flame sleep? Basically, you seal your oversoul memory behind crystalline veils. Amara, she passed through inner earth temples of restoration and grief. She encoded her gifts and guidance into song lines, waters, in the womb grid, and she watched the rise and fall of other civilizations from behind the veil, intervening only when the flame lineages were at risk. Then when the earth began calling again, she chose to return, which is by incarnation through scattered pieces of her oversoul across time. So I told y'all that there are about 17,000 shards or oversouls that, there are 17,000 of us who have Amara as an oversoul across timelines, dimensions, realms, but not on Earth. In Earth, there's only 3,200 to 4,200 who have Amara as an oversoul. So 3,200 to 4,200 or 4,400 that have her as an oversoul. Okay. So she decided to selective incarnation. And selective incarnation is that she decided to re-enter using the pattern of selective incarnation, not all at once. And this happened only when conditions would allow, meaning she is only going to embody in a lineage that carried just enough remembrance, meaning that they kind of have an inkling that something happened. They kind of remember Atlantis, but they may not be sure about those things, right? She also had to pick a time when the flame could be safely reactivated, meaning that Earth's collective frequency had to be high enough for her to incarnate. She also needed a body that could hold her frequency without collapse. Now, we talked about in the Bloodlines episode, we talked about the different blood types and what that tells you about what type of body you have, right? AB negative are the hybrid, the multidimensional bodies. Okay. O negative are ancestral something bodies, like whatever it is. She needed a body that could hold her frequency without collapsing. Okay. And she also needed a soul agreement with other flame holders who would help her remember, meaning that she needed to make contracts with other souls that were going to incarnate at the same time as her to help her to remember. Okay. I have experienced some of those people, and I don't, and she chooses to remember through pain because pain is a catalyst to change. And so I can't even be mad at the people in my life who have done me wrong, because they've taught me some of the best lessons in my life. But girl, you didn't have to do all that. You could have just, slipped me a note, sister. I mean, I'm with it. I've been with it my whole life. But yeah, a lot of the people who we encounter in this lifetime are only supposed to wake us up. They're soul mirrors. Okay. So she did not choose power. She did not choose wealth, and she did not choose position. I know that firsthand because my family struggled. Okay. She chose where her light could reawaken slowly, safely, and fully. How did she choose her families? She did not choose it by bloodline. She chose it by frequency codes, which were often hidden in trauma-based pain society. So what she looked for was people, lineages who had wounds that were connected to ancient earth lineages. She also chose families that carry pain that needed to be alchemized, because when one of us in our family line decides to go on this path of healing, and we start to stand in our authenticity, and we start to remember, we clear the crystalline DNA for what came before us and after us. Meaning, like, pain exists in a family line until somebody alchemizes it, until somebody sees it and somebody does something about it. Right? It just keeps being passed from generation to generation to generation. And that's what we call the generational curse breakers, right? It's going to exist until somebody gets it out of y'all DNA, because DNA is a storage system. It holds energy. So when you create something, you're creating it out of the energy that's stored. You get it? Also, lineages with unfulfilled prophecies. Okay, vows that we made that never came to pass. And then sometimes she would choose families who had once betrayed or abandoned their flame as well, meaning that they chose ego, they chose separation, they chose comparison and judgment and distortion so that the healing could occur through embodiment. Okay. So this is why people who carry her oversoul flame, sometimes they're born into complex, painful, and spiritually disconnected families. Okay. They feel misplaced or deeply different than the people around them. And it's because they have to burn away the distortion in the bloodline before they're able to reclaim their flame. Okay. They often awaken later in life because they had to spend so much time trying to survive long enough to remember. Okay. And this was by design. It's because when a flame like Amara returns, she does not return to be worshiped. She returns to walk as the code, to activate other people, and to restore the dream through embodiment, not title. Each incarnation was a seed of the original dream, carried in silence until Earth vibrated high enough to call her fully awake again. Okay. And now many of us are the seeds that are no longer buried. Okay. So now let's talk about the indigo children, the crystal children, the golden children, the rainbow children. Okay. Because when the atomic bomb went off, that was a timeline event that had to happen. Yes, this is going to be on YouTube. That was a timeline event that had to happen. Okay. And the reason why it needed to happen is because it was part of Earth's evolutionary path. Okay. So when the atomic bomb went off, it caused trauma. Okay. When you cause trauma in a place, Earth is a body like we a body. When we experience trauma and we don't process that trauma, it causes us to contract, right? Which causes weaknesses in our field and we start leaking energy. Okay. And that's where attachments and that fear energy and all that stuff can attach to us. The same thing happened to Earth. So when you have genocide or war or whatever going on, you cause trauma in a specific area. And the powers that be, unfortunately, did this on nodal points. And they did this on purpose because if they can corrupt the nodal point of the crystalline grid, then that's where the grid collapses. Okay. So they chose that area specifically. But when the atomic bomb went off, Earth contracted. Right? Because she experienced like being punched in your gut. She contracted and then it created a weakness in her field and it sent out a signal. And so what happened is a lot of beings from our planets that seeded Earth, like Sirius, Pleiades, Lyra, Venus, was like, okay, we got these are like a fucking 5-year-old with a gun. We need to, like, we cannot allow, like, we have to interfere because now it's affecting more than just that planet. We have free will until it sends ripples out into the collective and starts to affect other star systems. And if we are going to put everybody at jeopardy, then they will jump in. Then they will say, okay, bitch, give me the gun. You know? So that's what happened. And what happened is a lot of us started coming in troves and we just needed to be born, meaning we were born perfect. We just needed to be born because we come in at a higher resonance. But the problem is that when you come into a distorted environment with a higher resonance, everybody perceives you as a threat because you feel different and you start to pull them out of their comfort zone. And in order for them to stay comfortable, they have to attack you. They need you to be less because if you could be less, they could stay comfortable. Okay. So we had to go into separation. We had to forget all these things, but a lot of us came here on a mission to help. Okay. So the Indigo children started coming in the 1970s, early 2000s. These are the warriors of the soul. Okay. They are here to break systems. They are here to challenge authority. They are here to expose the truth. Okay. They're strong-willed. They're intuitive. Ooh. Sorry. I got a chill up the back of my head. They're strong-willed, they're intuitive, and they are rebellious, but they're also sensitive to injustice. Okay. These is the black sheeps. I don't care. These is the black sheeps. Okay. Many of them faced diagnoses. Diagnoses is crazy. Many of them were diagnosed with things like ADHD, or they struggled in rigid systems like the education system. Okay. And then all these private prison systems started. That's another story. but they were not meant to fit into this environment. Okay. Then you have the golden children. Now, the golden children and the crystal children, we're going to have to talk about them simultaneously because they were coming at the same time. I mean, same with indigo children, but these two specific actually work together. Okay. So the golden children were coming, they were born between 1995 to 2010. Okay. Their core traits are that they are the builders of new earth. They are solar architects. Okay. So a newer wave of these golden children actually came post 2012 with a powerful surge after 2020. Okay. The golden children. These are the children that they be having in those tunnels. I'm always getting ahead of myself. I got to stay focused on the solution, not the problem. The solution, not the problem. Okay. These kids are going to be extremely confident. They're going to be knowing, and they're magnetic. And they also remember their divinity. Okay. They're not here to repair the old. They're here to create the new. Oftentimes they speak with wisdom far beyond their years. And many of them remember past lives in Atlantis, Lemuria, and star realms. The purpose of these children were to activate solar temples of the new earth. They were supposed to be embodied Christ light or solar Sophia codes, and their presence awakens others like a divine spotlight. And they're often surrounded by strange synchronicities, or they have access to impossible knowledge, meaning like, how the fuck do you know that? Okay. Their energy signature is a gold light, a white gold light, amber, solar yellow, or rose gold tones, meaning like if you see their aura, that is what you're seeing. And they feel like fire through stained glass. Then you have the crystal children. The crystal children were born from 1990 to 2010. These are the healers, they're grid tuners, and they're frequency stabilizers. They're born primarily from the late 1990s to 2010, but some of them also came earlier. Okay. These are going to be beings who are softer, they're empathetic, they're deeply connected to love, healing, and peace. They carry high frequency heart energy. They often have deep bonds with animals, with crystals, and with elementals. Okay. Many indigo parents gave birth to crystal children. Okay. Ultra sensitive, empathic, and psychic from birth. They're deeply connected to nature, water, animals, and the crystalline frequency. And oftentimes they are nonverbal or speech delayed as infants because they are tuned to telepathy and not communication in this way, because we actually used to communicate heart to heart. Okay. They are here to repair and recalibrate the energy grids of Earth. So the purpose of them is to carry the frequency of peace and purity and soul alignment. They work subtly to dissolve. They work subtly with the dolphin and whale codes. Many are keepers of dolphins and whale codes. They harmonize spaces just by being in them through their aura. And their energy signatures are going to be soft blues. Some of them have a white aura. Some of them have like lavender in their aura, and some of them have like pale rainbows. Okay. And their energy feels more like liquid light or like moonlight on calm water. The crystal children, their mission is to heal, harmonize, and repair the grids. Their primary element is water and aether. Their aura frequency is moonlight and translucent crystals. Their energetic role is stabilizers of peace and remembrance. Their communication style is that they tend to be quiet, telepathic, and empathic. And then their earth task is to hold ancient songs and crystalline keys, whereas the golden children's mission is to build, lead, and activate. Their primary elements are going to be solar fire and light codes. Their aura frequency is solar flares and golden plasma. Their energetic role is architects of radiant future. Communication style is going to be bold and expressive and sometimes even commanding. and their task is to bring new blueprints and create sacred systems. These two often work together. The crystal children are the foundation of the golden children. The crystal children are the foundation, and the golden children are the builders. Together, they are forming new harmonic civilizations, one frequency at a time. And some of these souls are hybrids, meaning that they are both. They carry both crystalline memory and golden blueprint activation, right? The fourth are the rainbow children. The rainbow children started coming 2005, and they're still coming to this day. These are the kids who have the energy of pure joy and pure presence. They're often believed to be incarnating without karmic debt, meaning they don't have to repay anything from a past lifetime. They get a fresh slate coming in, and they carry memory of other dimensions, but they live mostly in the now moment. Okay, so what you have to understand is that timelines are fluid, and soul groups don't always arrive in strict waves. Some indigo souls are still coming in, especially during chaotic times, to anchor fierce truths and transformation. Because remember, Earth births what she needs. Okay. Others carry blended energies, meaning indigo with crystal resonance, or even newer frequencies we haven't named yet. Okay. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because our children are the future. They're the ones who are going to awaken the elders. Okay. She entrusted them with the temples. Okay. There is a reason why there is a war on our children. There's a reason why there is a war on our children. There's a reason why there's trafficking and trauma. There's a reason why there's 85,000 of them kidnapped 2 years ago, and they can't tell you a motherfucking thing about where they are. How you lose 85,000 kids? Where are they? And you're supposed to be doing check-ins? That don't make sense. There's a reason why they doing what they doing on them islands. There's a reason why they traumatizing them. They're trying to seep them in distortion so that they do not rise. Not only that, they're not the only ones traumatizing them. Some of y'all are too, because y'all don't understand what they are, and you're trying to make them fit into a system they wasn't supposed to fit into. And so when they don't behave the way that you want them to behave, you whooping and you beating on them because that's all you know. Okay. So there's a reason why there's a war on our children. All right. So that is all the stuff that was done after the sacred betrayal. Okay. I wanted to talk about the children because the children holds codes and frequencies. And like I said, she entrusted the temple to the children. She knew that the children would wake up the elders. She knew that the future would wake up the past. Okay. So we got to know how. The indigo children, the golden children, the rainbow children, the crystal children. That's how. She knew that there would come a time where Earth's frequency would start to rise. Millennials. And there's millions of us. Millions of us. Okay? So, let's talk about the war in heaven. Okay? We got to talk about the war in heaven real quick because I feel like there's so many common misconceptions about this. And this idea comes from, is like a trickle down from Atlantis falling. Thank you. All right. So this is actually a metaphor for the cosmic battle that happens between light and shadow. And I don't know if y'all have ever seen The Legend of Korra, which is the spinoff from Avatar: The Last Airbender anime. Okay. The Legend of Korra second season is about the battle between light and shadow. And I think at episode 10, it starts to get juicy. Okay. And it talks about the yin and the yang. The yin and the yang. It talks about the yin and the yang. Okay. The light and the dark. Now, heaven does not refer to only one place. It means the higher realms, meaning that there are several celestial realms that sit on top of the astral plane, which is kind of like a purgatory, waiting room, type of situation, right? Which the astral plane is the closest to us. But then there's several celestial planes that exist above that. Okay, so it just means the higher dimensions, the higher realms, or the realms of divine order, light intelligence, and cosmic harmony. Okay, the war was the energetic rebellion or distortion that took place when certain beings or forces chose separation from source. Okay, attempting to override the natural law of love, unity, and free will. The battle is remembered as the fall of the Luciferic or false light systems, the rise of AI mimicry or synthetic timelines, which we're going to actually talk about what those are in the next episode. We'll talk about some of the false things that exist in our reality that are not real. But they were seeded, they were planted, they were instilled. Okay. The hijacking of stargates, sacred sites, and original codes of Earth. It was a real conflict, but it was not a conflict of swords or anything. This was a frequency, consciousness, and sacred architecture war. Okay. Now, what you need to understand is that war has already been won in the higher realms. We are the realm of effects, meaning that it starts higher and then it trickles down to us. So the war has already been won in the higher realms. So in the higher dimensional layers, 5D and above, the original divine blueprint has already been restored. The Christ Sophia grid is reactivated. The organic timelines have been secured. The source codes are intact and radiating outwards. But here in the 3D and 5D, we are experiencing the delayed ripple. And this is a kind of holographic echo of that battle still playing out in time and space. But it's already done. Okay. We just still feel like we are in the middle of it because the lower timelines, those that are based in fear and inversion and control, are still unraveling. They're collapsing, but not quietly. So what you're going to see during this time is systems that are grasping for dominance. What's happening with ICE? Systems are grasping for dominance. You're going to see people awakening through chaos, even through them trying to get us in a state of public outrage so that they can attach these emotional feeders. It's just waking some of us up. I woke up through the George Floyd situation. I think a lot of us woke up during COVID, but I woke up through the George Floyd situation. They were trying to traumatize me, and they did in a way. But what they really did is made me realize that I need to do something. Right? Ancient pain is starting to rise to be transmuted. So a lot of us are feeling pain that does not belong to us, grief that does not belong to us. Last week, the feeling that was rising in people was inadequacy, the sense of belonging, external validation, wanting to be in connection with other people. So clinging to other people was Cancerian energy, the mother wound. The mother wound was rising last week. Feeling like you're not enough. It's being cleared. Okay? But it's not because the light is losing. It is because it is flushing everything into view. You need to see the truth. You need to see the truth because that's what wakes you up is the truth. And the truth cannot be denied. Once you know better, you have to do better. That is how you are designed. Once you know better, you have to do better. Okay? So what does that mean for you? When you feel tired or you question whether the light is strong enough, remember the outcome is already known. It's already done. You're not here to win a war. You're not here to win a war. You are not here to win a war. And that's why I stop myself when I start talking about what they're doing. It doesn't matter what they're doing. That's dead. Okay? You are here to witness its final dissolution, meaning most of us stood in line to be here. It was already done. Most of us stood in line to be here. So we came to witness the final dissolution and anchor the codes of the victory that has already taken place. And this is why remembrance, ritual, and heart coherence are so important right now. What I mean by that is remembrance comes through you living authentically. Because when you live authentically and you can heal and you can get that pain out of you, you get access to the codes that are meant for you. Ritual means when you get up in the morning, you take care of yourself. The episode I did last week was about ritual. Why? Because we need to have this conversation. I gave you exactly what to do, what Amara used to do, but what you should also do as well. When you get up, you tend to yourself first. Put on your mask first before you try to tend to anybody else. So that means if you get up and you go to work every single day and you come home, you go to sleep and you go to work again and you don't spend no time with yourself, get up earlier, even if it's 30 minutes. Meditate, sit with yourself. Work out. Then go be of service to other people. When I get out the shower, I seal my field. When I'm in the shower, I'm doing release. I'm releasing. I'm restoring. I'm releasing and restoring. Everything for me, my whole life is a practice. When I drink my water, I speak my intention over my water. Because water is intelligence. But it's also about heart coherence as well. Are you listening to your soul? Your soul communicates to you through your emotions. It's only telling you, I like this or I don't like this. I should move towards it or I should move away from it. But it's us who assigns different meanings. For example, if you in the grocery store and you turn around and you yell at your kid because they knocking down all the cereal boxes, and then somebody turns around and is like, don't yell at that kid, and you feel shame. So you internalize that you a bad mother when your soul is just saying, hey, choose another option. You don't actually like that one. Your soul is just saying, you don't like that option, choose another one. But you assign meaning because you living in your head and you say, that means I'm a bad mother because I felt shame for yelling at my kid. No, it doesn't. You came here to make mistakes because you learned through contrast, meaning you got to do it the wrong way in order for you to do it the right way. Your whole life is mistake after mistake after mistake because that is how you learn. So it does not mean that you're a bad mother. It means that your soul, that action is out of alignment with your soul. Choose another one. Okay. Now, you're not fighting a war. You're weaving the frequency of peace that follows the war. You're weaving the frequency of peace that is going to follow the war, which means you need to be at peace. And when you at peace and you live in your life, in the way that you get to peace is you do what you want to do, where you create a life that you actually fucking enjoy. Meaning listening to your emotions, yes or no, is what it's telling you. Move towards something or move away from something. If it makes you feel good, do more of it. If it doesn't make you feel good, do less of it. Because if it doesn't make you feel good, that's your soul saying you're getting closer away from me. You're getting further away from me. If it makes you feel good, that's your soul saying, hot, it's hot, keep going, right? So the war in heaven has already been won, but heaven is not a place you escape to. It's a frequency you return to, and you are here to embody it through your heart, through your song, through your knowing. And the new world is already here. It's not a possibility. It is a frequency timeline and a reality that is anchoring itself through the people who choose it, meaning it's available to you. You just need to tap into it. You need to choose it. Okay, you need to align yourself with it, which is peace, harmony, unity. Okay. But the full truth is that the new earth is guaranteed at a soul level, but it's not going to be forced at a collective level, which means it exists. It is rising. It is encoded into the divine blueprint of earth itself, but not everyone will choose to walk it. And some forces will try to distract, delay, or distort it, but they are never going to be able to stop it. Okay. So the new world the new world is a frequency shift. It's not a calendar event. And when I say a frequency shift, I mean, it's a mindset shift. You have to shift your mindset because that's how you move into different realities, dimensions, and frequencies and higher harmonics. It's by changing your mind. It's by expanding and that happens through you expanding your consciousness. You need to become aware of more. You need to learn more, which is part of why we're doing this together. You need to remember. So it's a mindset shift. is not just going to arrive one day on a ship. It's more like those people who resonate with its frequency of love, of truth, of sovereignty, and of heart coherence. And when I say sovereignty, I mean that system don't have authority over you. There is nobody who governs you. You govern yourself. Okay. Many of us are already slipping into that frequency because that frequency has been here. Every time that you act from soul instead of fear, meaning you do what you actually want to do out of passion instead of making a decision out of practicality, out of rationale, out of your mind, out of logic. Every time you make a decision from your soul, that is you slipping into this frequency. Every time that you heal instead of blaming, you slip into this frequency, meaning you got to shift from the victim to the survivor. You have to take responsibility and control over your life, over your experience. Every time that you remember instead of distract, meaning that in order for you to remember, you got to sit with your fucking self in stillness. But if you're too busy on social media, scrolling, sitting there watching Love Island, hey, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. You're distracting yourself from yourself. Okay. So movies, TV shows, radios, music, all of those things are amplified in this reality because it's meant to distract you. It's meant to distract you from yourself, because when you're doing that, you're looking at something external of yourself instead of looking at the internal. Right. And every time you speak your truth, you embody your gifts. That's you holding your truth. You holding your flame. Accountability. Yes, Irene. You holding your flame. Okay. So many of us are already walking in the new earth frequency, even if the world around us has not caught up. Because the split, the frequency bifurcation, whatever it's called, the split has already happened. But we share the same space, which means you still can see what the other side is doing. You still can see the distortion and the distraction, but you have to consciously choose it to tap back into that timeline, meaning that they are doing all of these things to try to capture your attention. And the moment that you feed into it, you are choosing to the old frequency over the new frequency, which means you need balance, which means you need to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Okay. You're not waiting for something to happen, though. It's happening through you right now. Okay. So the new earth cannot be stopped. It only can be delayed. There are forces that resist this new frequency. And the reason why they resist it is because it undoes the system of control. It frees the human heart. It reconnects us to our original blueprint, which is sovereign, meaning we don't need a government system. We don't need anybody telling us what to do. It's loving, it's luminous, and it makes every external system of domination obsolete. But these forces cannot override the divine blueprint of Earth. They can only distract, divide, or delay those who haven't remembered. And some souls will choose to stay in that old frequency out of fear and out of karmic entanglement and out of unfinished lessons. And this is not failure. It is a choice. That is a choice. Okay. The split is already in motion. What's happening now is not one timeline winning over the other. It's divergence. Have you ever seen the movie Divergence, Convergence, Divergence? Divergence is a dimensional split. So some are anchoring into the timeline of remembrance and coherence and joy in the new system, and others are looping fear and division and scarcity and artificiality, choosing transhumanism over transcendence. But both can coexist for a while. But eventually the vibrations are going to become too different. Meaning that right now we'll be sharing the space. You can be in the gas station with somebody who is experiencing the other timeline frequency and you're experiencing this frequency. But eventually we're going to be too far apart, meaning that people who choose this new earth frequency are going to move further into peace and harmony, and they're going to move further into fear and division. And so it's almost like when you go to high school, you see those people on Facebook, but you don't ever see them in your physical reality. That's kind of, you have awareness that they exist, but you don't ever interact with them at all. And it's because y'all frequencies are so different and y'all have separated, y'all have moved in a different direction. Okay. And the grid for that, I already talked about this in a previous episode, stabilizes in 2033, which they have this looking glass, which is an Atlantean technology, which allows them to see into different timelines. And they cannot see past 2033, no matter what they do, whatever outcome they put in, they can't see past it. And it's because of this frequency bifurcation, which is the dimensional split. Okay. Um, I'm evidence of this. Some of y'all are evidence of this as well. The more you embody, the more others will awaken as well, because some of us are here to awaken other people. You are the observer. Exactly. You're the awareness in the body, but you're observing your thoughts. You're observing your emotions. You're observing the reality, but you don't have to participate in everything that you see. Okay. And you got to stop thinking that things are happening to you, because things are happening for you. You need to get out of the victim and into the survivor. Okay. Every single thing that you experience in this life, this lifetime, was teaching you a lesson. What is the lesson? That's it. It's teaching you a lesson. That's it. Don't get overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. If it made you feel horrible, that's a no. Move in a different direction. Make another choice. If it made you feel good, do more of it. Okay. So the risk is not that it won't happen. The risk is that you may delay it. Okay. The only danger now is you doubting yourself, you waiting for permission, and you asking for proof before embodiment. And that's hard. I say this simply, but I understand that it's not that simple, because we've been conditioned since we were 5 to look for the answers, logic, analysis, rationale. It needs to make scientific sense, but that's not how you're designed. And if you cannot find the answers, what happens is we get stuck and we don't know what decision to make. So we stand still instead of moving towards anything. You have to move forward even when the path is uncertain, even when the path is unknown. Okay. And the goal is not for you to be perfect. Perfect comes from performance culture. In this society, men perform by doing, women perform by presentation and by pleasing. Okay. This is not a survival of the fittest type of situation. You only have to be willing. You have to walk it, speak it, create within it, and hold the field when other people falter, meaning you can't collapse. When you know better, you have to do better. And just because somebody around you doesn't know better or doesn't do better doesn't mean that you have to follow suit. You have to stand your authenticity. And this brings me back to Amara. What role does Amara play in this new earth? Amara is going to step back into her purpose in New Earth, but not as she was, not in the same form. This time, she's not going to walk alone. Her purpose has already begun to activate, not as a single incarnation, but a fractal flame carried by many people. Her memory is rising in me and other people, because we are the vessels that she entrusted with her return. Remember, I said incarnated on Earth, there's 3,200 to 4,400 who will have Amara as an oversoul. It does not mean all of us, though, because I already talked about the flame lineages and Yehuda and the Judah lines. Okay, I talked about their name is on the tip of my damn tongue. Yahshua, the Magdalene codes. So you got to be you, and you can't try to be me or anybody around you, because you need to remember your role, not anybody else's. And it is an individual thing. Okay. So her memory is rising in the people who she created, basically. Thank you. Her purpose never ended. It just went dormant. So when Atlantis fell, Amara's flame was not extinguished. It was extinguished. It was hidden. And she placed her codes, like I said, again, in the crystalline grids, in the waters of earth, in the heart of those who return when the frequency is right. And her vow was not to save the world. It was to hold the template of sacred feminine sovereignty and crystalline remembrance until earth could hold that frequency again. And that moment is now. She's not reincarnating as a single being. She's reincarnating through many. In New Earth, she is not meant to be a single priestess in a temple. She is meant to be a network of flame bearers, each remembering a piece of her. She is stepping back into her purpose through the voice of the healers, the hands of the artists, the grief of the awakening, the song of the womb carriers, and the sovereign presence of those reclaiming their light. Her purpose in New Earth is going to be slightly different. In Atlantis, Amara held the flame to preserve divine memory. In the New Earth, she holds the flame to reawaken divine embodiment. Her presence will no longer be hidden in ceremony or behind veils. She will be seen in truth that is spoken by the softest voice, love held in chaos, the sovereign soul building sacred systems without hierarchy. Because she's not here to lead an empire. She's here to ignite remembrance, not to be followed, but to inspire alignment. So there's going to be an evolution of power, purpose, and presence with this new earth frequency. There are going to be leaders in high priestess in this new earth, but they're not going to lead through hierarchy, control, and separation. They're going to lead by frequency, by embodiment, and by example, not by elevation, but alignment. Okay. I say all the time, and I'll say it again. Nobody is better than anybody. Everybody has a different role and a specific function. If everybody figures out who they are absent of everybody else, they can figure out what that role is. And they start to remember what their oversoul decided for them, because your oversoul holds your soul's mission. Your higher self is specific to this incarnation, but your oversoul holds all the timelines, everything that you've ever been. Okay, so you need to figure out who your oversoul is, because that's going to tell you what you came here to do. And that's an internal journey. Sit with yourself in stillness without any expectation. Just sit with yourself every single day and see what comes up and deal with it. One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. But it's not about hierarchy. Everybody has a place, you know? So the new earth priestess is not above, it is among. Okay? There's nobody better than anybody. Okay? The new earth priestess, like I said, is not above, she is among, or he is among, or whoever, because gender is really fluid. Okay? So in Atlantis and older timelines, the high priestess held a visible role. Okay? Amara was the keeper of the flame. She was the voice of the temple. She was the gatekeeper of sacred rites. She was the holder of secrets, of thresholds, and of ceremonies. That was necessary then, because they believed that only divinity could embody through temples. But in New Earth, the flame is no longer hidden in a temple. It is meant to live in every body that remembers. So the New Earth high priestess does not rule, gatekeep, or perform. Okay? There are no worthiness tests. She walks among, offering frequency, guidance, and space for others to rise into their remembrance. She doesn't say, I will show you the way. She says, the way is within you. Let me stand beside you as you remember. That's compassion. Compassion doesn't mean you have to do anything. It means presence. You sit with somebody while they go through it. Okay? Leadership is going to be embodied. It's not going to be elected. You know how I talked to y'all about how the crystal famed Crystal selected Amara to be the high priestess because she held a specific resonance? That is how it's going to be. It's about resonance. Okay, so in the new earth, leadership is not about titles or status or visibility. It's about who can hold the field, who can anchor coherence, and who lives in sovereign alignment. Okay, some will be called guides, others will be called mentors, others will be called flame holders, but not because they are above, only because their frequency creates safety and activations for other people to remember themselves. That's it. It's only because they save people. It's only because they've cleared enough of the distortion out for their vessel to be clear, for them to feel safe. I did a video a couple days ago about trauma dumping. Okay. And I talked about why people try to use other people's vessels for soul alchemy. Go and watch that video. It's really, really important conversation. You know, I also did another video a couple days ago, and it started off talking about Love Island, but I used Ace and Huda from Love Island, which is a TV show. It's a reality TV show, to talk about performance culture and how society rewards us on performance. And so men have to do, women have to give. And so there's so many people who are playing out that archetype because they're trying to belong or trying to do society right, because that's what they've been taught. And that's you not showing up authentically. That's you showing up as half yourself. Okay. So the leaders will feel like, I remember When I'm near you, I feel safe to awaken in your presence. I don't want to follow you. I want to stand beside you. That's what you'll feel when you are in the presence of a leader. Okay. Priestessing will be decentralized and heart led. And what that means is there will still be ceremonialists, there will still be grid keepers, there'll still be healers and oracles and sound weavers and flame tenders, but they will not gather in hierarchical temples. They will emerge in communities and in circles and in families and in gardens and in creative space. And all who carry the codes will activate each other, rather than one claiming to hold the flame alone. Okay. So the high in high priestess will no longer mean power over something. It will mean one who is highly attuned to the flame of the divine and serves by becoming it. Okay. So the new earth priestess does not wear a robe or does not have a role or anything like that. They may walk barefoot, unseen. They might be seen laughing with other people. They may speak in poetry and frequency and silence. They may guide hundreds or simply hold one child in peace. Okay. They may hold lineages from Atlantis or Lemuria or Venus, but they'll do so with grace, humility, and joy. This time, she's not going to be a gateway to the sacred. She is the one who reminds you that you are the gateway to the sacred. So instead of having one person, it is all of us. It is all of us who have an impact. It's people within your family. You don't have to go anywhere outside of yourself or outside of your people, because nobody is above, everybody is among. And that's what caused Atlantis to fall. And that's why Earth needed to go through this evolutionary cycle, because we needed to realize that divinity doesn't come only through specific people. Divinity doesn't come only through a temple. Divinity lives in all of us. And so Atlantis did need to fall. What happened with Atlantis had to happen for us to come to that realization. Because what did Amara do? She split everything up. She realized, oh, it does not have to just be me. It could be all of us. I can share the power so that if some forces come against me, I don't have to be the only target. Because if I'm the only target, it's easier to get us up out of here. Right? And so she decided, oh, if I just split it up and share the power, and you hold this piece and that person holds that piece and that, then we can't be eradicated, because we're better in numbers than we are as one. And that's real unity. That's real unity. And Atlantis was about divine union. But in order for you to come into divine union with anything outside of yourself, you got to be in divine union with the energies inside of yourself. As above, so below. You got to release that ego. You got to do what you should do over what you want to do. Right? So boom, that's the lesson for today, guys. Did you love it? Drop a 444 if you loved it. Change is coming and it's coming soon. Let me read some of these. Do nobody put anything in the Patreon? I usually answer questions on my Patreon in the Soul Tribe tier, but I don't have any questions, so that's good. Period, y'all. I love that for us. I love that for us. I was trying to figure out whether or not I was going to talk about Ma'ara, like myself, like what my energy is, but I'm a little scared. I'm a little scared to do that. I love when I come past your lives. Thanks. Oh, y'all are so sweet. But I was going to talk about her just because there's a lot to unpack. Because once Atlantis fell, Ma'ara and I started to incarnate. Meaning, like, I've lived I think 6 lives as Ma'ara and I, and collected some karma and all these things. But each time she woke up, but she wasn't ready. Like, the earth wasn't ready. And so I think sometimes when I'm teaching stuff and people ask me certain questions, I may get frustrated, and it's because I've been doing this for many lifetimes. And I'm finally at a place where people are able to meet me where I am. So there's like some past life trauma that I got to heal from a little bit when it comes to being visible, because in past lifetimes, it's cost me everything, you know? So I might tell y'all a little bit about her story I think next time we're gonna talk about the false systems and stuff like that. And I might give y'all a little tea about Amara too, and like, like the type of beings that she dated, whether or not she had children, and like things like that. Just because I feel like people have a lot of questions about that. People question that, and I just want us to, just talk about it. Put it out there, because maybe it'll help somebody to remember something. Because my part of my remembrance actually came from, I had to go and follow someone to follow you. Thank you for helping me tune my alignment. I had to go and follow someone to follow you. What you mean by that? Thank you for helping me tune my alignment. You're welcome, my love. But my remembrance actually came through somebody else saying something, like, meaning like I had that vision of Amara turning that crystal into many shards. Like she did that while she was still in the temple, but she was about to leave the temple because it felt like something was coming. Was it a different version of me, or like somebody was proposing as me? Is that what you're saying? I was just watching the live on YouTube and the background looks totally different. I see stairs there. And on TikTok, the 2003 is now backwards. Wait, what are we talking about? On my shirt. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but anyways, okay. I love Amara. What a beautiful soul. Yes, she was actually. She was earth embodied. So that's the soul of earth. Like that's earth herself. Um. So yeah. So I want to keep having the conversations and stuff. And we meet here every Wednesday at 1:00. Just to have the conversations. I think it's just the framing. Oh, okay. Um. But yeah, we meet here every Wednesday at 1:00 to have the conversations and stuff. Next week on Sunday, I am doing a spiritual anatomy course because we need to talk about sex and sexuality from a spiritual lens. We need to talk about biological processes, which are going to be like yawning and crying and sneezing and goosebumps and stuff like that. We'll also talk about womb health. We'll talk about spiritual organs and internal alchemy, because we think that our organ, like we are taught through materialist science, and materialist science means that everything happens in its material world. So everything that happens to us, we chalk up to like a biological process. And that's not true. We are matter, material, but we're also spirit. So I'm going to do a course on spiritual anatomy because I think people need to kind of understand their body from an energetic lens. So that's actually available on my website, www.bigtaj.com. And that's going to be next week. The course itself is $55. You'll get a copy after the course, and then I'll post it afterwards. It'll be 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I think that's 5 Central, 6 Eastern Time on Sunday next week. And then I'm also still, like I said, restructuring human design. And I'm going to eventually, once I get it fully structured, I think that it's still important for us to do the human design from the mental standpoint, meaning that the human design that's taught through schools and stuff like that is human design that is learned from the mental component. But Spirit has been teaching me it through the soul component. And so it changes everything. It really does. Because I feel like they've eliminated sound as a frequency as well, or vibration, people who feel by vibration. Sorry, y'all. Child, I do that every time. It's really crazy. Sorry, y'all. I ended up kicking the cord out. So my apologies. I do that every time. You would think that I would be better. I've done that like 3 times over the last couple of days. So I apologize. But that's basically it. I was talking about me doing the flame lineage readings and stuff like that on TikTok late at night. So I usually hop on like 7:30, 8:00 my time, which I think is like 10, 9, 10, 9 Central, 10 Eastern. So that's it. So this will be available on YouTube, y'all, in my spiritual talk playlist. I love y'all deep. I got a client in like 2 hours. I got to scram so I can go get some food, and I'll talk to y'all later. Alrighty.